This is the Feelworld L4 video switcher. The device offers a 10.1-inch touchscreen, streaming output via USB, 4 HDMI and 1 SDI input, along with chroma key, picture-in-picture and multi-view. They suggest it can stream to multiple platforms, but this is a bit disingenuous because the device itself doesn't do any streaming or encoding. You have to connect it to a streaming encoder to upload to these services. The device itself is literally a video switcher with a webcam output which can be connected to a PC for streaming. Inside the box you get this very quick start guide which is largely about safety features, and you'll also need a magnifying glass to read it. It's in very small print. There's the device itself, which as you can see is mostly taken up with this screen with just a few buttons round the edges, and on the right here are power supplies for all around the world. Rather usefully, this box comes with a USB cable for the aforementioned webcam output and a power supply which is multi-format. You clip on adapters for whichever country you're in. So for example, it has one of these which may or may not be Australian, it has one of these which may or may not be European, it has one of these which I think is American, and it has one of these which is definitely British. And they just slot into place, giving you the power adapter for your particular country. Rather useful to notice that the adapter that plugs into the Feelworld is of the locking type, so it can't be pulled out. That is a good thing. And here's the device itself, with the 10.1-inch touchscreen, 4 access buttons for the HDMI inputs, 1 button for the SDI input, and quick access buttons for some of the main functions, like picture-in-picture, changing the audio or keying. You've got the usual T-bar with a very short throw on it, but it does the job, and then menu and cut buttons for transitioning between shots, plus this knob which both turns and clicks in to select things. But most of the actions of these buttons can actually be done just by pressing the touchscreen. On the back it has little feet to prop it up, but it also has little extensions to the feet which you can lift up, which just give it that little bit of extra access and raising on the table. On the right hand side you have what looks like a 1/4 inch thread mount and a vent for the fan. The front is just blank. Left hand side has another vent, a proper physical on-off switch which is nice to see, and it's got a good clicky action to it. There's another 1/4 inch thread, and there's the USB input for adding logos or doing firmware updates. Along the back you've got a 3.5mm audio input, 3.5mm headphone jack, connection to LAN over Ethernet, and the USB output to something like OBS on a PC to encode the video and distribute for streaming. There's 4 HDMI inputs, a program output which can also be switched to multi-view if you want it, and then you've got both an SDI output and input as well as that locking power connector. The device feels fairly plasticky, but I'm told it's made of aluminium, so it should be solid, and it's not that heavy either, weighing in at 1.3 kilograms. Alright, this is what the device looks like when you switch it on. Some bright green lights. Doesn't take very long for it to do an initialize. A quick logo. And then up it comes with the multi-view, which is fairly standard for one of these things. You've got the preview screen on the left, you've got what's actually being transmitted, as it were, on the right. Then you've got the 5 preview inputs, 1, 2, 3, 4 HDMIs and 1 SDI. Then underneath that you have the permanent settings and control panel. This is a touchscreen, and everything you need to do can be done just by touching the screen, but you've also got these physical buttons here which enable you to get quick access to some of the menus. For example, these buttons here are duplicated by these buttons here. So if I hit main, it takes you back to what would be that button. Picture-in-picture settings are a subset of main. Equally, keying is a subset of main. Audio takes you to that button. Switching is to do with what your fade and cut effect is going to be, and set is your settings, but you can also just press the buttons here. And it is quite a responsive touchscreen, I must say. I've seen some devices which have much laggier settings than this. There's a tiny lag when you press the buttons, but it's effectively not very noticeable. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 here obviously correspond to your inputs 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, but you can also just touch them here and you'll see that the preview screen is updating. Have I turned the key on? Yes, I have. Right, that'll make more sense if I turn the key off. So you can choose input 4, input 3, 2 or 1. And I haven't got any cameras that output SDI, but if I did, they would be on that input, but I haven't. So I've just got 4 HDMI cameras in. Obviously, you've got the T-bar for doing your transition between things, which I currently have set up to a fade, so we can fade between what you've got selected there and what you've got selected there. Now, rather curiously, this only works in that traditional television style of operation, which is you must queue up what you want next on the left and then take it, either with the T-bar or with the cut switch. You can't simply press these buttons and directly cut what's going to air. When you select here, you are selecting what is being queued up, as it were, on the preview, and then you press cut to take it. You can't simply say, I want to cut to this one. In fact, if you tap that, as you can see, you get a display on screen showing you what your inputs are set up to, but I'll just get rid of that. So all cutting is configure what you want and then take it. And now in terms of the main settings, there's some unusual things on this I haven't seen before. For example, this brightness, contrast, red, blue and green means you can adjust the brightness of your camera inputs. It's kind of camera control, which is not something you often see. So there we go, turning down the contrast of that input. And if I now take that one to air, that is the setting. And what we're now looking at is the contrast for the current input setting, which is me. So I could turn my brightness up, there we go, and turn my contrast up. Come on, there we go. If you press and hold, it does eventually jump in steps. But sometimes it goes so fast when you press and hold, you actually overshoot what you're going for. So it's a little bit clunky. I'd actually prefer if this was a little slider, perhaps with plus and minus 1 at the end of the slider for fine increments. But anyway, we can work with that. So again, if we cut, then I'm cutting back to that, and that one has gone back to there with the settings as it was. So we put them back down to, I'll put them back down to normal, which I think is 50. 50 in the middle is the normal. There we go. And I'll just put myself back to normal as well. Hang on. You see, I overshot there because I held it down a fraction too long. So there we go. We can adjust the brightness and contrast and color saturation of the images. Over here, by the way, 2 buttons. The top one with what looks like a picture of a laptop is actually indicating line input for the 3.5mm stereo input on the side, and the one below, the picture of a microphone, means microphone level input. So if you're trying to plug a line level source like I don't know, a phone or something into this, you'd need it set to line level. If you plug in a little microphone, you'd need it set to microphone level. My audio at the moment is coming through one of the HDMIs. So as you can see, you have got meters on the screen for all of the sources as well as the main output. And if we go to audio, you can actually, this gets confusing, I'll be perfectly honest. I'll start over here. You can select, if you're monitoring on headphones, you can select whether you want to listen to the individual HDMI or the SDI input, or you can select to listen to your multi-view or your program out. Now, by and large, you'd want to listen to your program out, I would have thought, on headphones. But this is where it gets a bit odd. The audio settings here for what you want to listen to seem to be taken with what you're sending to air. So normally your audio would just be its own standalone set of settings, but you'll see what I mean. If I set audio to HDMI 1 and mix audio, by which they mean a second channel of audio, so you can mix 2 things. So let's have some audio from camera 1 and, for example, some audio from, let's assume I had an SDI input. Your audio would now be both of those, but that applies to what you've got queued up. The audio going to air is not what you're changing. You're changing the audio for this scene, if you like. So when I do cut, that audio that I just set is now what's going to air, and what's now set to be changed here is what's in this window. It's not simply a mixer for the output, it's a mixer for whichever scene you've sent to air. So if I now configured it to be HDMI 2 and some audio from an input, then when I take that to air, that would now be going to air, and back on the preview is what we previously set up. Now, that's unusual, I think. Normally, audio is audio. You select what audio you want, and it's not related, other than if you select audio follows video, to whether you've taken a particular scene to air or not. I hope I'm making sense on this. But normally you would set your audio, and that audio just stays set to what you've set it to, regardless of whatever picture switching you're doing. Here, the picture switching carries the audio settings with it, which I find a bit confusing. But perhaps that's just me, but I've not seen it before. All the other mixers I've ever tried, you set the audio and that is then consistent regardless of what you're doing with the pictures. Okay, let's get you some of these other options. I'll come back to that one. Actually, that's the audio we've just looked at. If you click on this one, fade effects, this is what happens when you decide to cut or do the T-bar. So you can select to have a wipe that way. You can select to have a wipe that way. All the usual kind of things. Wipe up, wipe down, wipe in. You get the general gist. Wipe over that way. And I'll just put it back to fade because I prefer fade. You can also do cuts by pressing cut here instead of that button, and auto does it over a preset time. The cut duration you can see you set here, and you can actually do the T-bar by a fader on screen, which is why I think those other brightness and contrast settings ought to be doable via a little on-screen slider. If they can do it here, they could do it for those other ones. It's just a bit easier to get where you want, and then a plus or minus one at the end of that would enable you to go dial in something very precise. Right, let's go fully that way. You've got also, slightly unusually, a cut method. A to B means when you put that to that, whatever was on that comes back there. But you can just do that one, and whenever you then do a cut, that one gets copied to that without that one changing. So whatever you had there has now vanished, and that one has now become that one. So if we, hang on, if we go back to that, and select something different there and then take it, that's now taken, but the other one's disappeared. If we went to 4, take it. Do you see what I mean? But if we go back that way and choose something, they toggle. Matter of personal preference, I suppose. I think the toggle way is the normal way of doing things. It's the way I've usually seen this kind of thing happen. If you go into the information screen, you've got a bit of stuff about the networking. I have plugged an Ethernet cable into this, and you can turn your DHCP on or off, and that's what it's been assigned by my local network. You can turn a histogram on and off if you want to see that on your screen, which can be useful for checking your exposure levels. You can also turn the audio meters on or off. I think having them on is the best option generally. You can calibrate your T-bar if for some reason it's gone wonky. Basically, this tells you to push it to the top, press next, push it to the bottom, press next, and then it's recalibrated, and you can switch between English and Chinese. And then over here in the settings, you can tell it to be program output on the multi-view, or you can tell it to be multi-view output on the I'm calling it the multi-view. It's the HDMI output on the back of the device, can either be program or multi-view. Of course, you don't need to have anything plugged in terms of a screen to the output of the device, because you have got this lovely big screen here. But if you do plug something else in, you can set it to be multi-view or program. If, for example, you had put a recording device on the output, you'd set that to program and just be recording your output. You can change your format here, 720p, 50, 60, 25 Hz, 30 Hz, 50 or 60 in 1080. You can turn a logo on or off. So I've already got there just their preset L4 logo, which you can turn on or off. Now, rather oddly, you can only have one image loaded into this device at a time. And if you want to put another one in, you have to go through a bit of a faff using their software that takes an image, turns it into this L4 icon.bin file, and then you put it on an SD card, press import, you import their L4 icon.bin, whatever you've called your file, and that becomes the graphic that you then have available to you as a logo. You can move the logo around. If I press and hold this, you'll see that the logo is moving. So I've now moved it over there to the middle. Up we go. And back again into the corner. But it's just literally the one image, and if you want to do another one, let's see, you have to mess around a bit and then put it on a card and bring it in, and that's then your one and only graphic. And you'll notice no still store on this for anything like graphic backgrounds. In fact, if we go back to the main thing and look at picture in picture, you can choose what you want to be your main background and what you want to be your picture in picture. and you have positions for middle, top left, top right, bottom left, bottom, but you can't adjust these in any way. These are preset. Now, for me, I always was taught back in my telly days, you leave an area of the screen as the, what do you call it, the title safe and graphics safe area. So strictly, a picture-in-picture should be in a little bit, because otherwise on some old tellies, they'll cut off the top and right hand bit of the screen there. But you can't adjust these, you can't move them, you can't drag them. They are just set to these presets. There's no way of altering them that I can see. And I'm pretty sure I read in some of the comments on the Feelworld site that they don't have a mechanism for adjusting them. But also you'll notice, although you have got two images running at the same time, there's no way of putting them side by side over a background, effectively doing a super source. You can't do that in this. Your only option for two images at the same time is, let's do that one, is to have one in the corner, whichever corner you choose, or the middle, and the other one as the main background. So you are, I have to say, a bit limited on that front. Again, it's very snappy. The touchscreen doesn't hang about. It's nice to operate in that sort of sense. I just wish this was a bit more customizable. But for sure, look at all this screen real estate. And that's all firmware. They must be able to update the firmware to give the option of either dragging them with your finger, since this is a touchscreen, or changing something here. If you can do it with the logo, where was the logo? Look, if you can do it with the logo thing there, you can surely put the similar sort of thing here and be able to move the picture-in-picture around. That still won't necessarily give you the option of super source with a side-by-side with something on the background, but again, firmware, I'm sure it must be possible for them to add some sort of still store in this for a background and then make the two windows side by side. It can't be beyond the wit of software engineers to do that. Anyway, that's your picture-in-picture. And then if you want to do some keying, now let's get the right ones here. The background will want to be HDMI 2. No, we want the background to be HDMI 2, and the main one might as well be me. There we go. And I had actually preset, if I turn that off, that's your background. And you turn it on, and oh look, I've keyed myself into that image. And the way you did that was you press pick on this, and it gives you a tiny little dot on the screen, and you can literally tell it that's the color you want it to sample, which obviously in this case is the green screen. And then when you turn it on, it does the keying, and you can turn up and down the tolerance. If I turn down the tolerance, you see I vanish practically, and then you turn that back up again, and gradually you get to, I think I had this on about 30, didn't I? And you get to a point where you are keyed. I've got a reasonable amount of light on that green screen, so it's actually not a badly keyed. It's fairly consistent in colour, and I think this does a fairly good job. Now, I'm sure there are circumstances where you might find a trickier key. I don't know, but that seems to be working okay for me at the moment, so I'll turn that off anyway, and we'll go back to that being the normal thing. One thing it does have is an app you can run on your phone, download it from the App Store or whatever, and you connect it to the same network as this thing is on, run the app, and it just finds the device. You can see there it is. If you had multiple ones, presumably they would show up. So you select that, and it gives you a complete duplicate of the controls. So as I switch from 1, 2, 3, 4, you can see on the device itself, it is actually switching between 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can then, where's the cut button gun there? You can do your cutting, you can do your automatic dissolve, you can do it with the T-bar. So if for some reason you want to run this remotely, you can do that, including all the mixing of the audio. You can go into the menus, turn on the histograms and things like that if you want. And this, again, works very snappily, I must say. Seems to work okay. I haven't had any problems with it. I haven't used it that extensively, I'll be honest, but it seems to do the job. You can set up your picture-in-picture, say what you want in each of the screens. There we go. And if you wanted to change your keying, you could do that there as well. So yeah, neat little app. And in terms of whizzy functions and special effects, that's it. You've got picture-in-picture and key. So by and large, this is a switcher that switches. It's not a bells and whistles switcher. The main bell and whistle on this is the fact that it's got the big touchscreen, which is large and works nicely as a touchscreen, and of course it's got that SDI input as well. And that, in a nutshell, is how this thing operates. Some final thoughts then. Well, first of all, as I have already mentioned, this is not a streaming device. And to be fair, on the front of the box, they very carefully say video switcher. But then here, they also say multicam streaming. And on the back, they say stream to, and they give the logos of all these different platforms. But the device itself, it has no encoding and streaming capabilities within it. It just has a USB output, which you can then plug into something like a laptop or PC running OBS, and that does the encoding and streaming. To be fair, I plugged it straight into my MacBook Air, and OBS saw it straight away, and there was absolutely no problem with OBS seeing it as an input, both audio and video. But let's just be clear from the outset, this is a switcher. It does not of itself stream and encode. There are a few little improvements I think they could make. I mentioned some during the demo. One other one I think would be, since you have got this nice big screen here, let's assume you've taken this somewhere for its portability and you haven't taken another screen with you. It would be nice if there was a means, perhaps by long press on the window, if you could make the program output window go full screen and take over the whole thing so you could really see what you were outputting. And maybe that could be applied to the preview and all the individual input windows as well. Long press, see it temporarily in full screen, and then touch the screen again to bring it back to the normal multi-view. That would be a useful improvement. I found the duplication of controls is both good in as much as you can press the physical buttons if you like, and I'm someone who likes pressing a solid physical button rather than a touch screen, but it's nice to have the duplication. You've got the option, but the button here, which you could twist and click and twist and click to go through all the menus, bit long-winded, couldn't really see the point of that. That seems to me to be redundant. Touch screen, yes. Buttons, yes. The little knob thing, no. It got warm while I was operating it, but I would not say it got hot at all. I have certainly tested bits of kit before that when you put your hand on them, it's like, oh, you could cook an egg on that. This, no. The fan came on from the moment I switched it on, but it definitely didn't get hot. And the fan noise was, I would say, audible, but no worse than any other similar device. Could you hear it during the demo? The thing was there, I was here, the fan was running, so if you couldn't hear it while I was running the demo, my little microphone was here on my chest, so if you couldn't hear it while I was running the demo, it presumably won't be a problem to you. It slightly bucks the trend, this thing, because I've seen other switchers and encoders from lots of other companies, they're all the rage at the moment, aren't they, offering all kinds of bells and whistles, PTZ control, video replay, what else, I made some notes here, macros, NDI, all this kind of thing. And this doesn't have any of that. You can't do macros, you can't do NDI. It is I would say a straightforward, a no frills switcher that does what you tell it to do, which is switch between the inputs. It's slightly frustrating that in the audio controls, there's no way to adjust any kind of delay on it. So if you're putting audio in through, there is an audio in on the back. I couldn't see, at least, any way of adjusting the audio delay, because there will be a slight delay to video coming through the HDMI of any cameras or whatever. So that could be fractionally annoying. There are lots of comments I've seen on the Feelworld videos of this product on their own YouTube channel, them saying, well, we're taking all the feedback on board, we'll feed it to developers, this is the first revision, obviously there could be developments in the future, and I think a lot of this could be tweaked in firmware, so that's about it. In conclusion then, if you need a very portable device, if you don't want to go around lugging a big monitor around with you, you just want to turn up, plug this into some cameras and go, and be able to see what you're doing, because there are other switchers that have tiny little screens, this one nice and big, and if you also want that luxury of an SDI input as well as 4 HDMI. So I mean that's a lot of capacity in a small device which is very portable. So for that niche, if that is you, then this will do a good job. If you are wanting an all-in-one encoding, macros, PTZ control, video replay, logos, lower thirds, all the bells and whistles, this will not be the one for you. So if you're interested in it, have a look, check out their spec and decide if this really is what you want. I hope this was useful, and thank you very much for watching. Cheerio.